scholars believe the Union blockade sealed the doom of the Confederacy. We'll talk about one ship that enforced that blockade after it ran the blockade, the USS Arizona, when we return on Civil War Talk Radio.
How much time each day do you spend managing your personal or business calendar? 15 minutes, a half an hour, maybe more. Is the conference room available for next week's meeting? And how many people do you have to ask to find out? Have you ever misplaced or, worse yet, lost your day planner or handheld device? And what do you do about that missing information? Do you own or operate a salon or carpet cleaning business? How about a realty office or any one of 1,000 other service-based organizations? Can your customers make their appointments even when your office is closed? If any of this sounds familiar, then Schedule Online is the solution for you. For more information, call toll-free 888-668-3355. That's 888-668-3355. Or visit us online at www.scheduleonline.com.
Before we return to our riveting drama, our sponsor insists that we listen to a radio show about television.
I'm Jim Benson, host of A Different Sort, as I direct you toward a galaxy of TV memories, guaranteed to leave you spellbound, while I present many of the greatest legends in television history on the TV Time Machine, every Wednesday beginning at 4 p.m., right here on World Talk Radio.
World Talk Radio, bringing the world to you.
To speak with our show hosts or guests during the live show, call us toll-free in North America, 888-514-2100. Everywhere else, call 001-858-268-3068.
Welcome back to Civil War Talk Radio. I'm Jerry Prokopovich. We're talking today with the chairman and project manager of the USS Arizona Civil War Gunboat Foundation, Rob Christopher. And Rob's been telling us about the history of this vessel, born as the Arizona before the Civil War, seized by the Confederates, becomes the blockade runner Caroline, and then recaptured by the Union in October 1862 and rechristened once again the Arizona. So now we've got our story up to the ship's return to the Union side. What happens next?
Okay, well, the ship itself will be in Philadelphia for a number of months, and it's basically going to be repaired and refit. It's going to have $27,000 worth of work done on it. They get $27,000 for that time. And basically what they did is they put, one of the most interesting things I found was that they reinforced just blanked it out, what would be the billet head or the bow with large oak timbers, about 12 by 12, 12-inch by 12-inch timbers, and then wrapped the bow with iron. Now, it was not a ram. It wasn't designed as a ram, but they did reinforce the bow for ramming. Then what they did is they put 4 32-pounders on the deck, and then one 30-pound, and then one 12-pound, and a bow. And again, the bow was covered with oak timbers and iron plating. All these modifications increased the tonnage from, again, 570 approximately tons up to 959 tons. So the ship became quite heavy. The first commander was a young man named Daniel P. Upton. He was a 28-year-old acting volunteer lieutenant with no naval warfare experience. Now, in just over this past year, I've been doing a lot of history on this guy, and I think it's important just to tell you that the history of this vessel is so colorful, from the actions that it was involved in to the people that were on board, Upton being one of them. Interestingly enough, Daniel Upton and his brother George were in New Orleans just prior to the outbreak of the war, and he wrote a letter to his father, who, by the way, is a George P. Upton, a wealthy Bostonian merchant who owns actually a shipping industry from China to California. writes to his father, and this gentleman was involved with helping establish Boston College. I mean, it was one of those real Boston Brahmin families. Well, Daniel writes his father and says, you know what? I think I'm going to have to side with the Confederacy in this war. If the war does come about, I will have to go to and support the South. And his father begged him in a number of letters to come home, and so he could talk to him. Daniel kept refusing to come home because of his own ideology that he knew people would not accept him. So he actually stayed down in New Orleans for a time, trying to decide what he was going to do. And eventually, he would come home, and again spend time with his father. And then he obviously talked it through, and he did join the Union Navy. Interestingly, though, as you read his letters, you can really see this young man is struggling against what he believes in his heart and what passions there are from his family in doing quote the right thing under the Union flag and government. So throughout his time he's struggling with this, and in fact to a point that a time later in the future he will actually desert from the Navy and hide out until the end of the war. And eventually, I guess his misfortunes all catch up with him, and in 1867 he will actually commit suicide by taking strychnine. Wow. So I'm actually in the middle of putting together the book about this young man because again he has such an interesting history.
And that really that touches on something about the Civil War in general. I think a lot of people sometimes are initially drawn to the study of history out of a sense of escapism, a sense of romanticism, that the past was a more clear-cut time of right and wrong, of good guys and bad guys, and in contrast to the ambiguities and gray areas we face today. Wouldn't it be nice if we lived when right was right and wrong was wrong? But you just do a little research like you're doing with this officer, and it becomes clear pretty quickly that the ambiguities and moral dilemmas that they faced were easily as challenging, if not more so, than anything we have today.
Absolutely, yeah. So anyways, he'll take command of the vessel. I'm going to go ahead and move forward for you.
Yes, please.
And this will be March. I love this. Again, just the ironies that fall throughout this history. March 13th, 1863, which would be Friday the 13th.
Always. On Friday the 13th this past year, our guest locked himself out of his car and couldn't appear on the show. So it can be troublesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
So this is when the Arizona actually takes active duty, and they're going to steam out of Philadelphia and head down towards to the Western Gulf Blockade Squadron. The crew itself came primarily from. There were 30 of the crew that came directly from Pennsylvania. There was one Georgian, 2 South Carolinians, and 3 Virginians that were U.S.-born. And we had a number of men from Ireland and England. We even had a Prussian. And so a very eclectic group. They're going to, again, as I said, leave Philadelphia, and right from the beginning, there were a number of mechanical problems with the Arizona, even after all the refitting. In fact, Upton decides to take the Arizona directly to Wilmington, Delaware, where the ship was built at Harlan and Hollingsworth, to see if they could do something with the machinery. Anyways, they were losing time, and they had to get down to the Western Gulf, and so they just scrap that idea. They do the best they can and steam on down south. And it was, in fact, it was at this time that the Arizona would receive its first prize of war when they were steaming south along the Atlantic coast around Pensacola, Florida. They come across a vessel called the Aurelia, and the Arizona will actually take prize of this vessel, and this is one of 2 vessels that the Arizona will actually have written down in the history as a prize of war. And that will be one of Upton's positive beginnings as he continues his command, but from there it kind of goes downhill.
So they got that ship before they're even on station. They're just
right,
on their way down there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good haul.
Yeah. And so it's obviously a very positive beginning for him, as I said. Now, as we progress, the Arizona will get on back up into New Orleans, so it returns to where its history began in its steaming history. It's basically at the time a communications and transportation vessel. It's moving troops around and just up and down the Mississippi River, its tributaries, the Atchafalaya River, which was one of the major cities at the time. There was called Brasher City, now called Morgan City. So it steamed all over, just doing these odds and ends at the time. And
let me interrupt you. You mentioned it's been refitted with these heavy guns. It's almost doubled its displacement, so it can't be nearly as fast as it used to be.
No.
So it couldn't catch itself, basically.
Yeah, I guess that would be a good point there. Yeah.
So it's being used for other kinds of duties than running down blockade runners.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It really didn't serve a whole lot of time as a blockade vessel. And as the ship came into its own as part of the Western Gulf Blockade Squadron, the assets were obvious. In one particular case, if we move forward into the history, the Arizona will, in April of 1863, will go to the Atchafalaya River, which, for those folks that don't know the geography, it's just west of the Mississippi River. It's a fairly large river, very navigable. And the Arizona steams up the Atchafalaya and meets the Estrella and Clifton. This was all part of a campaign to take control of some western lands of Louisiana. Particularly, there was Fort Bisland was in the area, and Union troops were going to try and capture that fort. Anyways, the Arizona gets into an area called Indian Bend, where there's a famous plantation called Madam Porter's Plantation, which exists today. And if anyone ever gets into Franklin, Louisiana, they should definitely take the opportunity to visit Madam Porter's Plantation. It's absolutely beautiful. You can do the tours. So the Arizona lands its troops there at Madam Porter's Plantation, and at that point, the Arizona continues steaming up the Atchafalaya River into what's called, at that time, Grand Lake. Now, Grand Lake is much smaller in scale today due to reclamation projects down in Louisiana. But while it's there, the Arizona, the Estrella, and the Clifton come across the Mary T., the Confederate vessel transport Mary T., the Grand Duke, and the Queen of the West, that former Union vessel that had been captured, and it is now a cotton-clad Confederate gunboat, river defense boat. So the Arizona, Estrella, and Clifton will engage the Queen of the West. And it's interesting, again, as you study this history and go through these primary sources, in the official record of the War of the Rebellion, it speaks of how the Clifton and the Estrella really were more involved in the firing upon the Queen of the West. But our Daniel Upton of the Arizona writes in a letter home that he actually was the one that aimed the gun that set fire to the Queen of the West. So it's taking a little credit there that may not be deserved, but we'll see. Again, time will tell on that. But the Queen of the West is destroyed, and it is lost right there in Grand Lake. It actually would float down river a ways before it would settle. And in fact, just a year ago, March, I led a team out to the Atchafalaya and what's left of Grand Lake in an attempt to begin a preliminary study of the area. The Queen of the West has yet to be found, and so we're hoping to take that challenge on in the near future. Now, after the Queen of the West hits the bar, the Arizona and Upton are ordered to go basically remove the guns off of the Queen of the West, which was a common practice at that time. And Upton was in charge of doing that, and he did successfully complete that task, as well as took on a number of contraband from the Queen of the West. And for those that aren't aware of what that is, it's basically these are black slaves or impressed individuals forced into service in the Confederate military. that individuals will become landsmen for different vessels. So that was the first major engagement that the Arizona would be involved in. And then from there we move on, and the Arizona is involved in an engagement at Fort DeRussy. And Fort DeRussy is up on the Red River, also in Louisiana. And basically, again, same type of engagement. You have some river ships coming down from defense river ships coming down from the north, and the Union vessels coming up from the south, and they engage at Fort DeRussy. And I must tell you that there's a gentleman who's been a tremendous help with some of the history of Fort DeRussy, and I don't know if you are aware of him. His name is Steve Mayu. And Steve Mayu, basically, he runs a foundation that supports the preservation and conservation of Fort DeRussy. And again, a year ago, March, I was out there at Fort DeRussy, and his wealth of knowledge and what he's shared has really helped us in developing, again, more of the history of the Arizona. And so, again, I encourage everyone to become a part of conservation and preservation acts through some of these small organizations like Steve or myself in keeping our Civil War history protected.
And so it's not a bad time to remind people that if they want to contribute to your project, to the USS Arizona Civil War Gunboat Foundation, they can do so. Mm-hmm. Do you have a phone number or a website that people can go to contact you if they want to help?
What I can give you here is, first let me give you an email address. And,
please.
If you don't mind. It's USSAZCWGF@MSN.com.
That's USSAZCW. GF.
So that's USS Arizona Civil War Gunboat Foundation.
There it is, GF, Gunboat Foundation, and it's at MSN.com.
Right.
So if you want to contact Rob and find out more about this project or see how you can help, please, I do encourage listeners to do so. So we've got the gunboat now. It's fought a couple of battles. We're into 1863. We're approaching its fate, its destiny.
Right.
What happens next?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and move forward through this. Basically, what will happen is after the engagement with the Queen of the West in Fort DeRussy, Daniel Upton is going to be brought before a court of inquiry, asking or questioning his actions as a commanding officer of a vessel. Basically, what we have here is a situation where allegedly he did not come to the aid of another Union vessel or engage the enemy. And so he's brought before the court, and the court investigates it, and they determined that although his actions were not appropriate, they did not warrant him to be relieved of duty. He is reprimanded, and actually ends up getting a letter from Admiral Farragut saying that, basically, I hope you learn from this lesson and don't let it happen again, type of thing.
Not a good career move, definitely.
Yeah. And eventually, though, the Upton and the Arizona continually come across problems or create their own problems. There are a number of times, and this is one of the things that I found quite interesting, that Upton would go missing with the ship. And
with the ship?
With the ship, yes. I've got every day of the engineer's log from the Arizona and from the whole time of command as a Union vessel. And interestingly enough, when Upton was in command, there were questions about his whereabouts. And he had stated that he had been one place and all this other stuff had happened, but there is nowhere in the engineer's log where those days are recorded. So there are actually numerous days missing in a row that he says he was one place, but there's no record of it.
Well, we will have to find out what happened to the USS Arizona. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back and find out where it is, where it went, and where it is today on Civil War Talk Radio.